Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
3, 2, 1, and we're back. And Julie, it is June the 23rd, and we have a really fun show for all of them. This is going to be, what do you think, a 2 or 3-parter?
Probably 3, because I'm sure that we'll sprinkle it with coaching client stories, etc., to demonstrate our points.
Right. So here's the topic, and here's the theme. So you didn't take the listing. Why not? So we're going to assume, as you go through this, these series of podcasts, that you've at least had the opportunity to take a listing. You've gone to a listing appointment. Maybe you followed our system. You set the listing yourself proactively. Generated the lead proactively. You've pre-qualified. You sent the pre-listing pack. You did everything to the letter, and yet you didn't take the listing. And we're going to go through all the reasons why, after having hundreds of thousands of coaching calls, why you probably didn't take the listing. And if you're just getting started learning how to be a listing agent, this is going to be an incredible list of things not to ever do.
Yes, I call them listing traps, actually.
Yeah, that's good. I like it.
So you could get snared in any one of these. And, of course, the newbies are probably a little bit more at risk at this stuff because they're in unconscious incompetence. They don't know the questions even to ask yet, because they're gathering their experience. But there's a lot of traps in here we'll talk about that our grizzled veterans fall into, partially and sometimes because they're so successful.
Do you think, like, for every 100 agents that join us, let's say 50 of them are brand new and 50 of them are, they're mixture, right? So they've been in the business for 5 years and they've been selling, they've been making, say, $50,000 to $75,000 a year. So, we have obviously thousands of coaching clients all over the world. And I was just showing you, we have a whole bunch in Colombia now too, which is crazy.
Mexico and Spain.
Right. So the question I have for you is, if you had to, if there was a competition and you had to basically pick 10 agents from the list of 100, let's say, that join, whatever, and half of them, like I said, are brand new, brand newish, half of them are seasoned-ish, and your goal was to basically take your 10 and get them to, say, in 90 days or less, they all have to take, say, for example, 15 listings and have 10 closings and the rest of it. In other words, there are specific parameters that you have to coach them up to do.
Sure.
Would you rather have brand new agents, or would you rather have grizzled veteran agents that are supposedly experienced?
I mean, honestly, I love them all. Okay, and we're here for all of them.
But you have to choose.
Level. But
and
if
why?
I had to choose from a coaching perspective, I probably would go with the less experienced agents because they're more open to coaching.
I was actually
they have
thinking
fewer bad habits.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's the exact reason, because you don't have to spend so much time deprogramming.
Exactly.
And that's the biggest problem you have when you've been in the business for a long time. You have, generally speaking, you've had a lot of good experiences and a lot of bad experiences, but you've got you're licking a lot of wounds from really ideas that didn't work, from falling for one shiny object after another, and maybe you decide to work on your branding, and you've confused long ago. You forgot what the difference is between real work and just basically work theater, right? People have convinced you that real work is working on your brand, your logo, making videos, doing social networking, doing all this Mickey Mouse. You were convinced that that's real work, and it's going to be difficult for us to convince you that it's not real work, to get you to the point where you're actually willing to do the real work, I would say.
Yes.
And a brand new agent who's not been, I don't know what the word would be. Help me out here. Fooled into believing that real work,
confused, bombarded,
Right. That work theater is real work. They're going to be less resistive to frankly doing the real work. So if they haven't been fooled into believing there's other ways to go about actually building a long-term real estate career that has profit margins of 50, 60, 70%, which is really the mission that we have for all of our clients. They're going to be the ones that ultimately I think are going to take.
They say things like, just tell me what to do.
Exactly. So I'm going to talk to you about that before we get to the first point. Give me the profile of the agent that says, just tell me what to do. Like, we do get those, right? They'll join our coaching program. They'll say, I don't want to, look, I've been getting ready to get started in various levels of my life for a long damn time, right?
Yeah.
I've been carrying around the extra 20 pounds for 20 years, and I know what it means to get ready to get started, and I don't want to do that. This real estate career is something I've always wanted to do, always wanted to work for myself. I want to make this be part of my long-term legacy. for all kinds of different reasons. And I just want to get started and not waste time. I don't want to trial and error things. Tell me what to do.
Well,
give them the profile. Of
you
that
just
person.
were the profile because you demonstrated it by your level of commitment. Okay?
Yeah, I think that's true.
You said, I'm going to make this work. The ones that are harder to coach are the ones that are like, I'm trying it out. We'll see how it goes. This is like my side hustle. And, that they present that way. It's okay for real estate to be part-time, but it's not okay for you to not take it seriously. So the ones that sound like they're kind of just dabbling are less coachable because they are also typically more skeptical and will argue with you.
Well, you and I talked about this yesterday.
Yeah.
We went on our 6-mile sojourn yesterday around the property, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are talking back and forth why it is that pretty much any sort of sales environment, whether it be there's essentially usually single digits of people that will succeed, let alone succeed at a high level.
Sure.
Like
that
5%,
will actually take the action.
Right,
Yeah.
3%, 5%. And then you and I were talking why that's true. Why are there so few people ultimately when everyone has essentially, you could argue that, let's set aside all the preconceived notions that people have about each other and about other people. You're not too fat, you're not too old, you're not too smart, you're not too dumb, you're not too this or the other thing, right? Because everyone at the end of the day has access to the same information, be it our coaching or you can find a great mentor and you can learn a lot of great things that way. So if the playing field is more or less level, right?
It is because everyone has equal access.
Right. And so why is it that only 3 or 5% of most people in any aspect of life become the top performers? Why?
Because most people reach a certain stage in life, a certain existence, and they become comfortable there.
That's the conclusion we came to.
Mm-hmm.
That's
the short version.
That's what Julie and I talked about for 90 minutes because we were trying to understand, there's been whole industries that have been created, right? The self-improvement industry and all these other things that are supposed to help you unriddle or essentially solve for what we just proposed. Why is it that so few people actually succeed at the highest level? And really at the end of the day, again, it's not lack of information. It's not lack of knowing what your big why is or not having your vision boards or your goals and all the rest of it.
It's not lack of finding help because it's easy.
It's what Julie said, and that's the conclusion we came to. And I'd really love to know what you guys think about that. Text me, and we'd love to continue this conversation because it really does cut through the BS, doesn't it? So if at the end of the day, if you take those 100 people and you were to choose 10 that you're going to personally work with for the next 30 days, of the 10, there'll probably only be 1 or 2 that actually do it.
For sure.
Now the others that don't do it, even if you give them the exact same information, they aren't going to do it just because they're comfortable, not just in their own situation, but I think ultimately they're experiencing a psychological complacency. And that's when you and I, that's what we were, Julie and I were drilling down on in our long walk, is that what people do is when they have reached a certain level of financial, obviously stability, it's not even, wealth, it's just stability, where they have 60 to 90 days worth of cash flow coming in. But more importantly, everyone around them is exactly the same. Financially, everyone's the same. Everyone around them,
give or take a little bit,
and their family, and their community, and their neighborhood, everyone is basically the same. And so what happens is subconsciously, you fear the loss of that sense of community if you all of a sudden start to break free of that. It goes back to the whole crabs in a bucket story, right? You put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, and if one of the crabs tries to throw a claw over and pull itself out, then the other crabs are going to grab hold of it and pull it back in. And that's what happens a lot of times. Now, that's obviously a very visual way of thinking about it, but that's what happens, that we're all in a bucket of some variety, right? And we choose to stay in that bucket because we want it, because there's more security being amongst others that we perceive that are like us. And furthermore, and this is something also I think that's very, this surprises a lot of people. When you start becoming successful, if you give yourself the opportunity to be of service to a lot of people to the point where you start to accumulate success in a meaningful way, you start to accumulate wealth, let alone maybe you get rich where your money works for you and you no longer work for your money. You think that all your friends and your family are going to celebrate your ascension, and that's not true. And what you'll experience, and unfortunately this is true, a lot of people will reject you. And a lot of you know that because you've already experienced little jabs from your ascension, from actually becoming more successful. People start to say things like, don't forget where you're from, and stop and smell the roses. And there's so many different little innocuous, helpful, wink, wink things that people will say to you. And where oftentimes a lot of the subversive advice comes from is from the people who should know better than saying those things to you in the first place. But most importantly are your friends and your family. They're the ones that are going to be oftentimes the least supportive in the most meaningful of ways of your success because they feel you're rejecting them. Can you explain that, Julie?
Well, yeah, and they probably would not express it that way, but that's how they're feeling, right? Because you're the crab that's getting out of the bucket, and they're not sure quite how to process that. Does that mean that you must not be happy with the rest of your situation? Why are you not? Why is this not good enough for you, right? And so because they're not used to digesting that information, most people, and those of you who do real estate transactions are quite clear on this, most people's default is to go negative, unfortunately. It's not to automatically be supportive. It's something, it must be wrong with me or,
Well, where's that negative come from? The negative comes from fear of no longer being in the tribe, right?
Yeah.
The negative comes from fear of no longer feling like you're in your protective little cocoon.
You feel rejected a little bit.
Right. You feel rejected. And again, these are the types of, when Julie and I were trying to think, okay, how can we be even taking our own coaching business and what we say and how we say it and our coaches, how can we get everyone to go to the next level? How can we actually help our clients break through to realize that they can be one of those 2 or 3% that actually succeed at the highest level? And so again, if you give everyone the same information, if you give everyone the same, everything is identical. Everyone starts out, when you join a coaching program, everything is the same. And yet we know that statistically over time, there'll be 5 or 6% of those folks that become top producers. Some of the biggest producers in the country are current or past Tim and Julie Harris coaching clients. Fact.
It's true.
And on Bravo TV show, some of those people that Tim and Julie Harris coaching clients. Biggest brokers, Tim and Julie Harris coaching clients. And we've been in this business for a long time. So when you're doing anything for a long time, you're going to, that's how it goes, right?
You're decent at it.
Otherwise, you're not going to be in business for a long time. Well, so why is it that those people succeeded at the highest level? And the reason I think ultimately really comes down to is the environment that they're in was probably not conducive as they started to achieve success, but they were smart enough, or maybe it's not even smart, they were ambitious enough, let's say, to be willing to look for a new group of people to attach themselves to, right? In other words, they started changing their environment. Maybe it wasn't physically. Maybe they didn't move out of their community. Maybe what they did is they started reading different books and exposing themselves to new ways of thinking. So that, in essence, those virtual relationships became, as I know you want to say, they're masterminds, in essence, as Napoleon Hill says. So maybe that is the first place to start. And then as you become more successful, and then you choose, then if you're really going to be wanting to take yourself to the next level, chances are you're still not going to find anybody locally that's really going to support you. You're going to be, a real anomaly amongst all these. You're going to stick out. You're not necessarily you're going to be socially ostracized in some cases, in some places. This is just how humans work because you're too different than them. And that time, maybe you need to move. Maybe you actually need to literally move to work in a different market. Maybe you need to move up market.
It can be as simple as changing brokerages too.
Sure,
because
that's
if you did like one deal last quarter and you got all the awards.
That's a great example, Julie.
Because you know how agents are.
Totally.
I've had coaching clients tell me that they'll be at some awards thing and they'll be doing really great, and some agent will walk by and out of the side of their mouth say, "Well, that's great, but I bet you don't have much family life," or whatever the little shot across the bow is.
Right.
So sometimes it can be your immediate office that you're in. I have, and we're not your broker, but you get comments from our coaching clients that say, I feel like you're my broker because you support me more.
Again, we're not your broker.
But I understand that.
Sure.
I understand. I have
but
had,
it's not, but the thing is that it's not really the broker's job to provide that.
No,
really.
That's right. But if the agents that are surrounding you or, your office staff or whatever are not in absolute full-on support of you, then you might be in the wrong environment. You know?
Well, we're like their success family, basically.
That's what I wanted to say about our coaching clients, because what you said was, when you're surrounded by people who are just like you and you have this ambition to do and be and see and have more, you need to be amongst people who support that. And the interesting thing that happens that I see in our Facebook Live daily sessions is that once one or two of them starts to demonstrate that they can do it, and they're doing it, and they are lather, rinse, repeating, making their magic number, for example, then that starts to affect them in a positive way, right? So the ones that haven't, they're like, I want to be like that. I mean, if they can do it, I can do it.
And they won't say anything right away, right?
No, they'll just ruminate it on a little bit.
They'll ruminate, and then they'll show up and they'll say something. I remember so-and-so said something last year, 14 months ago or whatever, and I never will forget what they said. I carried it on with them, and you know what I've done since then? This is what I've actually done. 2 actually rounds the bend on this point.
Yes.
And again, this is something Julie and I personally experienced, and the reason I'm sort of on this little rant is because I want you guys to know if you're experiencing any headwinds and you're not necessarily getting the support for your ascension, for becoming more successful in all areas of your life, it's kind of normal, unfortunately. You're going to experience that in society nowadays, especially when it comes to the idea of accumulating wealth where you can be financially free. There's definitely a lot of headwinds towards the idea of people not being dependent on pick your government or what have you, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost looked at as someone who's wanting to be financially free is almost, in some cases, seen as somebody you shouldn't trust. Almost sort of like they're, for some reason, they're stepping out of how they should be in society. Who knows what, why, and where? Who cares? But for those of you who are experiencing that, I want you to know it's kind of normal. So that's number one. Number two, forgive the people, especially your families and your friends, for not understanding that you are indeed trying to improve yourself and you're trying to improve the life of your family and those you care and love. But also, to Julie's point, when you become more successful, you're going to have people who you don't even know are paying attention to you.
That's true.
Start modeling after you. And it's going to be when you see your family members doing that, maybe you're from some really poor rural area, someplace in the United States. And for some reason, I'm having coaching client names pop in my mind. And you decided that you're going to set the world ablaze and you're going to start selling hundreds of houses per year and you're going to accumulate rental properties and you're going to start having this big expansive life. Maybe you had some inspiration from a book you read or a series of books you read. Hopefully you attach yourself to us and you obviously have us as your wingman in your success plane. Well, what's going to happen is you'll see other agents in your marketplace that are going to start using you as their excuse not to be able to run their own 4-minute mile. You guys I'm hoping you understand. I mean, no one believed you could do the 4-minute mile until somebody did it, right?
That's
and
it.
maybe in your family, you're the first person that's actually going to run the 4-minute mile. Maybe in your community, the same thing. Maybe in your church, your synagogue, your mosque, you're going to do something that nobody else thought could be done. And yes, when you basically start doing it, you're going to make them insecure because they're all of a sudden going to start wondering why they're not doing it themselves, and all sorts of psychological turmoil is going to commence. But stay on your path because that is your chosen path, and you will never be satisfied with your life, no matter what age you are, until you've actually served your mission, which is to become the best version of you. And that is something that I have seen from coaching agents, and Julie, and I'm sure have experienced the same thing, and all of our other coaches, that if there's one, like if I were to have one, if this is the only podcast you ever listen to, I just want you to remember this. It's never too late for you to become the best version of you. You're never too young to start, and you're never too old to start. Right? Just start. And if you're at some place where you're finding yourself, you're comfortable and you're complacent and you're not improving your life and you've been slowly gaining weight and you're just oh my gosh, hearing Julie and I is making you a little insecure. You don't like feeling insecure. So your ego is going to shut us down. It's going to stop listening, right? Your ego is going to stop actually allowing you to internalize the thoughts that we're hoping that you're going to have as a result of hearing this. And that means ultimately you're not going to move forward with your life. And that is a choice that you're going to make, to the point that I was trying to make earlier. If you take 10 agents and you even put them behind with the best coach in the United States, Julie Harris, she's only going to be able to really get maybe 2 or 3 of you to go to the next level because the rest of you are going to be too insecure about making yourselves become something that your environment is unfamiliar with.
Yes, you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yep.
And your leading mantra should be, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. You've got to own it. And when you asked me before, if you had to choose who would your next coaching clients be, it's the ones who own it and say, you know what, this is going to work for me. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. And I'll deal with all the rest of the stuff along the way.
There is another type of, but if we were to look at the other group, the non-new agents, the seasoned veteran and whatnot, the ones in that group who, and I guess ultimately, if you want to think about all the thousands of clients you've had, which are the most likely to succeed, they're the ones that have been in the business, but have gotten burned out in the bullshit, and they're actually ready to do what's necessary.
Yeah, they're crying uncle. They're like, this is my business. I'm, they're all in. But for whatever reason, they've finally decided, I got to do something different. Because if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to keep getting what I'm getting. And maybe I'm, quote, stuck. We've had lots of coaching clients that come to us like, I've done 10 million in volume year after year after year. Well, so how do I get to 20? What do I have to do? I know how to do 10. It's not a bad place to be stuck. but it's not good enough for me. I need to change my ways. And those definitely are coachable as well.
Well, so if they've been in the business during this buying leads era, which really basically commenced in 2007 in earnest anyway, and they've never known anything else other than buying business, and they just think that's normalized, and everyone around them is doing the same dumb thing, and they, what you guys don't realize when you start running your business the way pretty much everyone else tells you to do it, you're going to make virtually no money as net profit. Your net profit is going to be 7-8% max. That's before taxes.
Less and less.
You might as well not have actually, some of you who build up these big teams to spend all this money on buying leads, they of course get all the attention, the plaques and the awards, but they're not making that much net profit. Your suspicions, listeners, are correct. They're spending all their money just for the accolades at the end of the day. Okay, so, but what happens is eventually one of those types are listening to Julie and I. They don't like what we're saying because they don't want to suffer the indignity in their minds of admitting that the path they've been on is not the one that's going to get them to where they wanted to be financially. And some of them are going to shut us down and say, listen, I'm not ready to hear this, because in doing so, I would have to take some ownership for having made bad business decisions in the past, buying all that business, buying all those postcards, doing all that branding, playing work theater versus doing the real work. Those agents are the ones that are the hardest to coach because they're not quite ready for the truth. But the ones on the other side of that, they're the best agents to coach. They're the ones that you don't have to convince that the other stuff is malarkey. They're the ones that basically have been up and down the mountain. They lived through it, and they know what we're saying is true.
Yes.
So I hope those of you who are wherever you are in this learning spectrum take seriously what we're offering you and what you can learn from basically becoming one of our coaching clients. Because at the end of the day, guys, this is the quickest way for you to make the money that you deserve. Well, it's up for you to decide if you deserve it, but you could earn helping other people primarily sell houses. I mean, our business is always going to be based primarily on the listing side of things. So do the smart thing, guys. Take the actions necessary to become one of our coaching clients. Just text the word success to 47372. Text the word success to 47372. Text the word success to 47372. And we'll text you back a link where you can join as a Premier Coaching member for around $100 a month. You can join with us in our coaching program. And this is with a daily semi-private coaching call with one of our coaches every single day except Saturday and Sunday. You get everything, listing presentations, pre-listing packs, everything you can possibly need to scale up your real estate business. You've read Harris Rules. You've listened to the podcast forever. This is the next natural step for you. Text the word success to 47372. Or you can just, if you're listening to us on your desktop or whatever, you can just go to timandjulieharris.com, click on coaching. First option is Premier Coaching, and join. Like I said, you can join for around $100 a month. So yeah, that was we do need to, the funny thing is if people were to be as, I think transparent, I hate that word, it's overused, but I'll use the word I actually was thinking of. What? Honest about answering that question.
Yes.
And it's not on the other side of a bunch of hours of self-improvement and dream boards and
blah, blah, blah.
If it just basically comes down to acknowledging the fact that essentially the comfort level, the discomfort level that they're willing to sustain is not enough for them to actually elevate themselves to where the level that they want to go. Yep. And then if you help them to identify the little subconscious jabs that they're getting from, it's not just people, by the way, it happens from media, it happens from society, it happens sometimes from just everywhere around you. You're being encouraged to stay the same. You're being encouraged to stay a gear in the machine. And you in your heart don't want to be that person anymore. Well, I'm here to tell you, and Julie and I are thousands of our coaching clients are living proof of it. It's going to be up to you to be willing to actually put yourself in that position where you're the crab that finally makes its way out of the bucket.
Yeah, and it's not uncomfortable all the time. You're actually going to be more uncomfortable for a larger amount of time if you don't take action.
Well, uncomfort eventually, as you get older, grows into something else.
Complacency.
Well,
probably.
I'll tell you again the word I was really thinking of.
Yeah.
Quiet despair.
Yeah.
Because what happens as you get older, when you haven't done the things in your life you know you could have done, those thoughts and those emotions don't go away. They're still there. The inner desire to have been and done something else with your life or other things in your life, but you didn't do it because, and that you now are looking back.
Building that story.
Right. Yeah. You're looking back and you're realizing that the reasons that you didn't do those things, again, especially when you're being completely honest with yourself and you're being introspective, those reasons, you're going to be incredibly disappointed with yourself about having allowed to determine your results.
No, but it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't.
Take action today.
And the best stories I like personally from coaching clients are the ones where they're like in their 60s and their 70s.
Yeah.
Didn't we have, I was going to ask you this. Didn't we have a coaching client, a lady that joined and she was like in her early 90s?
Yes, it's been a while, but yeah.
It's been a while, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember what state she was from? I remember we talked about her on our podcast.
I thought she was a California agent, but
yeah,
I
that was so
remember.
awesome, wasn't
yeah,
it?
and well, we've had coaching clients. I remember one of them that's come through and been very successful. He's 75 now, I think, a big broker in Hawaii, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And also managed some vacation rentals and had a really interesting business. His daughter worked for him. So, it's never too late unless you wait. Okay. So don't do that.
This
You gotta
really is
do
an
this
incredible
today.
industry. It really is an amazing
It's a huge
business.
blessing. I mean,
Yeah.
where else can you have your income go up with inflation without
yeah.
asking? I mean, come
Right.
on.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have time to get to?
Sure,
I don't know
why
where
not?
we're at. Okay. So you didn't get the listing. Why not? Now, why did I decide to make this our next podcast series? Well, you guys all know, not just because we're constantly harassing you to become listing agents, but because, the inventory issue, right? So listings are like hen's teeth right now. Everybody wants them. And when there's fewer to go around, that means you're way more likely to compete. Even if you don't think that you're competing, assume that you are competing. Okay. So fact, of all the activities in real estate, listings require the highest skill level. That's true. It's mental labor versus working with buyers, which is physical labor, especially now. Myth. And I don't know who started teaching this.
I think working with buyers has become emotional labor too.
It's definitely emotional labor, psychological
But
labor.
you know what? That's a good subtle point that you
Yeah.
said. So when you're working with buyers, you're out there giving away your nights and your weekends. It's physical labor in the literal sense.
Pieces of your soul.
Right, exactly. Julie's not trying to be flippant, but it's physical
true.
labor. Not so dissimilar in some markets to digging a ditch, let's say. Whereas working with sellers, it is about skills. It's about, using the phone. It's about knowing what to say and how to say it. It's about helping the people through questions move towards the desired result, which is obviously positioning the house on the market to sell. It requires skill.
And strategy and thought.
And the awesome thing about that is once you accept the fact that one is a physical labor, one is a mental labor, a skills-based labor, once you learn that skill, it's transferable. You don't want to live in Ohio anymore like Julie and I did. For whatever reason, Julie's allergies, the weather, you can then move to a different part of the country. And that listing-based skill set is transferable to any place you want to live, not just in the United States, guys, but in many places in the world.
It's awesome. Okay, so here's the myth. This one drives me crazy. People are out there, they're not even coaches, trainers, office managers, brokers, whatever, who are teaching you that it's okay and that you can expect to list maybe 50% of what you go on in terms of listing appointments versus listings taken. Now, here's a fact, which I hope is true for most of you. You wouldn't accept a grade of 50% from your kids, so why do you think it's acceptable for you? So let's take a look at the top 10 reasons agents don't walk away with signed paperwork on the listing appointment. So whoever, I know it's still out there, whoever's got that in your head, well, just expect to take half of it. That's so lame.
Why do you think people say that?
Well, I think a lot of people, maybe that's been their experience.
Well,
and because they never got the skill, so they make it okay for everybody else.
Well,
And they don't know how to coach you to do better.
all those things, and I'll say what's more, is because they don't want to have to be if you're paying someone to help you get better at listing houses and you only list half of them, and they tell you that's what you should expect,
that's normal.
then that makes it easier for them because they can just say, well, you listed half the listings you went on, versus if what Julie and I say is you should not accept anything less than, frankly, 100%, but you get a passing grade, obviously, at 90%. And our system is, I'm not going to guarantee in every market and every condition it's going to get you that result. But generally speaking, if you follow our system, you're going to do exceedingly well, a hell of a lot better than 50%. So here's the interesting thought for you. If I didn't have the confidence, and Jules and I didn't have the confidence in our system, that frankly, if we didn't have a system, if it's like most of our competitors where they're just basically an idea bazaar, then I would, hell yeah, say 50% of the time is good. Because then you can't hold me accountable for the higher
if
result.
I lower your expectation,
Right.
then you can't hold me accountable.
Exactly.
There you are.
Like if you went into a restaurant and they said, yeah, well, and the slogan was 50% of the time we won't give you food poisoning. Like, and you walk out of the restaurant and you're like, okay, well, let's see. Let's give it a few hours. And hot damn, I'm not sick.
Now, 50% of my heart surgeries you end up living.
I'm going back there.
Bring it on. Okay, here's another fact. Listing agents make more money and have more solid businesses and more free time than buyer's agents. The more listings you have, the more security you'll have mentally, emotionally, and financially. And I would add in this market, psychologically.
Well, okay. So as a listings, if you're going to be focused on listings primarily, what you should be, by the way, you're going to get your nights and your weekends back. You're going to get vacations back. You're going to get it so you can start going. You're going to get control. You're not going to feel, you could take, wait for it, the weekends off. Ooh. You can work normal weekdays, normal working hours. You don't have to basically be beholden to buyers. When you're working with buyers, you are working when they're not working, which means you're going to be working when, frankly, you'd rather be spending time at the beach or with your family at the softball teams. What burns people out is working with buyers, because you're seeing and feeling the turmoil, the conflict between not spending time doing the things that you are obligated to do as a human and not earning money. It's a conflict. You don't get that from the listing side of the business if you run your business the way we prescribe in our coaching program.
Yeah, so last fact, just to drive the point home, and then we're going to start, we'll do one of the top reasons they don't walk away with listings. Okay, fact, becoming a successful listing agent is the most challenging, most skill-based, highest paid part of your job. Not becoming great at this is actually a liability to your career. So make the commitment to learn the most important part of your job as a real estate professional, and that is being the listing agent.
You know, we have most of our coaching clients, I have to say, get to the point where they're so successful at listing houses, they just stop working with buyers altogether.
This is true.
And they'll henpeck, and this is the way we did in our career, in our businesses. You and I basically were, at some times we had, we had at one point close to 100 active listings, which is batshit crazy, but we did.
Yep.
But we were real comfortable around 30 to 40 listings.
Yes.
Sometimes it would drop around to 15, but right on 30 we were good.
Perfect. Yep.
Because we knew what our magic number was. We knew the certain number would sell and the average commission.
It became predictable.
It became predictable, right. And we didn't want to work buyers anymore, but we would still work certain buyers. And the criteria is very simple. Ideally, they're going to spend a lot of money.
Ideally.
So it makes it really worth your time. You like them.
Yes,
so they're not
non-competitive.
They're non-competitive, and if you're listing their house, and you're working with them on the buy side, well, that's an advantage as well. Now, what we did have buyers agents when we quickly realized that buyers agents was an exercise in futility, assuming your goal was profit. And this was back in the 90s. It was very difficult to make profit off buyers agents back then, even. When we got rid of all of them and we decided to no longer have buyer's agents, and Julie and I had the epiphany, why don't we just start referring out the buyer leads we get from all these listings to independent agents who love working with buyers, and there's lots of them.
That's right.
And we started making more net profit off the referral fees than we ever did having the agents work for us as part of our team. Now, our braggable numbers went down because normally when you have a team, one of the biggest reasons people do buyer agent teams is if that buyer agent happens to sell 10 houses in a year and you've got 10 agents that are doing that, you've just increased your production by over 100 units. And that makes your numbers look good. Doesn't mean you made any profit. So you're doing it not for business reasons, you're doing it for ego reasons. That's not a business way of thinking.
That's right. You know what a large chunk of our coaching is right now is coaching agents who have previously been very heavy with buyers, who recognize their listing track. They are getting listings. They're building their magic number while they're still dealing with buyers. It's a time management thing that we're helping them with, right? Because there is a transition into being able to refer your buyers to referral agents.
For sure.
But that's a big part of what we do.
Yeah.
And that's all right. Okay, so top 10 reasons that maybe you didn't actually take the listing that you thought you were going to. Number one, and this is by and large a grizzled veteran mistake, but anybody can make it. You assumed that it was yours and you were lazy in your presentation. You took the business for granted. This manifests in several different major mistakes. You showed up late, or you didn't give a real presentation, or maybe it was a lack of pre-qualifying questions.
You didn't look professional. You didn't act professional.
You weren't careful about price.
Right.
Some other mistakes are things like rescheduling and not looking or sounding your best. So a lot of this is the grizzled veteran with a repeat client or somebody in their center of influence.
Or even a family member.
Even a family member, and you're just far too assumptive. This can sneak up on you where, they felt that. Actually, one of our coaching clients got one away from somebody like that last week, where I think I said that maybe before, where the seller thought they were going to list with a friend of theirs, I think it was like a golfing buddy or something.
Well, we should tell them the script.
Yeah, well, and our coaching client ended up taking the listing. They had kind of written it off because the person had actually said, I think I'm going to list with Bob, right? Mm-hmm. And then he got the call and he said, Bob came over and I'm just not comfortable listing with him. He didn't even really price the house. And you've been following up with me so much. I think maybe it's time that we met. I was so proud of them for doing that.
So here's the conversation outline, aka script that we teach you in the coaching program, and I'm not going to get this perfectly, so
That's okay.
But here's the gist of it, and this will happen in your listing career. You're going to be sitting across you're pre-qualified somebody. And maybe they said that you're competing against two other agents, and you get there and you're the last agent there. You're following our listing presentation exactly, but sure enough, someone else snuck in that's going to come in after you, and it's their Bob who just got his license, or Betty that they knew in high school who they didn't even know sold real estate. They feel emotionally obligated to give this person a shot, or even tighter, it's going to be a family member. And so here's what we teach you guys to say in the coaching in the coaching program. And again, for those of you who have been in our coaching program, you're going to be pissed when I get the script wrong. But this is the gist of it. We want you to tell them a story, and this actually happened to yours truly when going on a listing appointment. But you can use this story, condense it into your own for your own use, right? So Julie just said to me, I'm gonna my neighbor down the street is going to list a house. I'm sorry. She's a friend from high school. She has a real estate license. She found out I was putting my house for sale. I've decided I'm going to list the house with her, or I'm thinking of listing the house with her. Mm-hmm. And then here's what you're going to say. Julie, can I tell you why, I appreciate the fact if you feel obligated to list with your friend,
sure.
Can I tell you why that might not be the greatest of ideas for you?
Why is that?
Well, I was on a listing appointment, and this really happened, listeners. I was on a listing appointment, and I was sitting across the table just like I am now. Mm-hmm. Or actually, there's another little tip. Don't sit across the table. Try to sit next to them. Don't be, because across put you in oppositional, emotional opposition to them. So try to sit next to them when talking about things like price and talking about net sheet, anything that could potentially be emotional. Don't put yourself across from them. But if you're presenting to them and you're using our listing presentation, then it's okay to try to sit across from them. Okay, so just be strategic. All this is we coach you guys how to exactly where to sit at the table, exactly what to say and how to say. It's part of our coaching program. All right, so I'm talking with a gal, and I'm going to guess. I'm terrible at guessing ages, but I'm going to guess she was probably 80 years old. And she had a beautiful house to sell. She had another house she'd already selected that she was going to move into, a condo, if I remember correctly. And so I'm sitting there, and I thought I was going there to get the listing. I answered all of her questions, and the listing paperwork was on the table, and she was about to sign it. And then she said to me, my neighbor down the way is Betty, and I've known Betty since high school, and she has a real estate license. I sit next to her at church, and I'm not gonna put a bunch of pressure on her to throw Betty, her best friend from high school, under the bus. And I stopped, and I put my hand on the paperwork, and I assumed that she was going to escort me to the door. And I said, so I assume you're going to be listing with your friend then. Again, I know that's not the greatest of objection handling scripts, guys, but the point was this really did happen, and this is what she said, and this became my objection handling script. Ready?
Yes.
All right. So I said to her that, and I was being really nice and respectful, And so this, I'll never forget this.
I remember.
All right, so she gets up from her table. She's sitting basically across from me, not really across, but I mean it was a round table, but you guys get the idea. So she gets up. She's a small little, Julie size, pipsqueak, and she gets up from the table, and she not stands all the way up, just leans on the table, leans forward, puts the glasses down on the bridge of her nose, leans towards me like I don't know, like she's about to
get punched.
I mean, really, she got real close to me, like face. She definitely wasn't being COVID. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay, so she got within probably 6 inches of me, and she looked at me in the eye and she said, "Hell no, honey, I want someone I can yell at."
I know, it was so funny. But the point is accountability, isn't it?
Right. But so from that, I used that to whenever I was to tell a story. So whenever I was in another listing appointment where someone was thinking about listing with a friend or a family member, I would tell that story, and everyone always laughs, right? And then, but the point is what she was thinking was she doesn't want to mix her business and personal relationships.
Yeah.
And Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you might not want to either, because here's the fact: there are going to be potentially things that come up in the sale of your property, which are going to be, things you don't necessarily want your friend or your family member knowing about. Financial things, or maybe there's some personal stuff. This is the reason you hire a professional, so you can keep your personal relationships personal, and you can keep your business relationships to someone, to her point, that you can yell at if necessary, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to yell at your best friend from high school if she, for example, if somebody leaves the lights on or lets your dog out, right? You're not going to yell at her because you want to keep her as a friend.
Now, look at how you're working that script, though, okay? Because I'm not sure they're all following that. Number one is, remember when you tell a story about somebody else, It removes the ego from the person that you're talking to. It's not about them. It's about
Right.
this person. I'm just, letting you know this is a story. Okay, so then the second thing is that you're making it a good thing, right? You're not throwing her friend Betty under the bus,
Nope.
as you said. You're actually being very respectful of that relationship and reminding them that you're going to run into each other after this transaction settles. And when you're playing bridge in a couple weeks or a couple months, do you really want to be talking about your personal financial stuff? Don't you want to protect that friendship? You're making it a good thing, not being in contention. Like, gosh, why would you want to do that?
Now, if you combine this with her friend down the way, who probably wasn't really, that professional, as certainly as you are as one of our coaching clients, you probably didn't send a pre-listing pack, probably didn't pre-qualify her, probably didn't dress up professionally.
Back to my story about our
Exactly.
client who won because the other person was too assumptive. So that is a big trap.
That's fine, Julie. We got one point done. We'll get the rest of them over the next couple shows. So we talked about a variety of things on today's podcast, as we always love doing.
Yes.
And hopefully you guys are feeling yourselves emotionally moving forward at least, maybe letting go of some of the things that have been holding you back. But the key to keep that momentum is definitely going to be the actions you take. Ultimately, that's the ultimate determinant of where you're going to be a minute from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now. It's the actions you take today. And so I strongly encourage you to become one of our coaching clients, because if you like the podcast, if you like our book, if you like all the other things we've done for the last 2 decades, you're going to love the coaching program. Go over to timandjulieharris.com, click on coaching, go to Premier Coaching, and join for around $100 a month. It's that simple, right? And then you can become a Premier Coaching member. And then when Julie and I are talking about the successes and the victories of our coaching clients, they're going to be the stories that you told us from you following our system.
About you.
Right. That's what we're looking forward to doing.
Indeed.
Anything else you'd like to say to these guys?
Get to work.
Get to work. Amen. All right, guys, have a fantastic day. We'll talk to you on the show tomorrow.
This program has been a presentation by Tim and Julie Harris, Real Estate Coaching. For more information on our real estate coaching and training programs, visit our website at timandjulieharris.com. Remember to tune in weekdays at noon for upcoming shows, and until next time, thank you for listening to Real Estate Coaching Radio with Tim and Julie Harris.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.